Vikings have been popularized in mythology as murderous plunderers who rode longboats raiding and pillaging settlements on the Baltic coastline, French coastline, and the British Isles. However, a far less common association but equally appropriate for the raiding and pillaging Viking is the Viking slave trader. Slave trading was an integral part of the Viking economy, as one Arabic writer at the time noted. The Viking Rus had no cultivated fields and they lived by pillaging. Vikings would not only enslave the local population of the settlements they raided in France, Britain, and Ireland, but also demanded slaves as tribute from the Eastern Slavic communities in Russia and Finnish farming communities. So prolific was the enslavement of the Slavic people, English speakers derived the word slave from Slavic. Many of the enslaved were destined for rich, vibrant markets in the Islamic world, such as those in Baghdad. The Viking Rus would use extensive Russian waterways to transport not only their slaves, but other Baltic goods, furs of all kinds, and forest products. Contemporaries noted that the Vikings treated their slaves well and dressed them appropriately, but not out of any humanitarian concerns, rather to make sure that their merchandise wasn't damaged and presentable in order to extract maximum silver from their slaves. Female slaves were also expected to fornicate with their Viking slave masters. Muslim traders took the act of evaluating a slave very seriously. One Persian writer from the 11th century wrote, "Most people imagine that buying slaves is like any other form of trading. In fact, the buying of slaves is a branch of philosophy." The author continued by describing various techniques in evaluating slaves, warning that the yellowing of a slave's complexion can be a sign of hemorrhoids, and suggests a potential buyer to ask a slave to lie flat on the ground. Then the buyer would press on both sides and watch closely for any signs of inflammation or pain. Muslim slave traders also prized slave eunuchs and would castrate many of their Slavic slaves. One Arabic writer wrote, "If you took a Slavic twin and castrated one, he would certainly become more skillful and more lively in intelligence and conversation than his brother, who would remain ignorant, foolish, and exhibit the innate simple-mindedness of the Slavs." Castration for Slavic slaves was thought to purify and improve the Slavic mind. However, castration wasn't performed on African slaves, as castration was thought to negatively impact African slaves. It should be noted that during this period, it wasn't just Muslims and Vikings that were engaged in slave trading. Much of Europe was engaged in slave trading. The Venetians were especially adept at buying and selling of slaves. Traversing the Russian waterways was no easy task for the Viking slave traders, as ever-increasing commercial activities from the Russian waterways attracted the attention of nomadic steppe tribes, such as the Pechenegs. The Pechenegs would wait for the Viking flotilla at narrow riverways so they could be attacked from the shore, or they would wait at points where rushing rapids would force the Viking flotilla to disembark. The Viking slave traders did not always have to make the lengthy trip from the Baltic Sea all the way to the southern Islamic world to sell their slaves. Financial intermediaries were available along the Volga and Dnieper River. They would purchase the slaves from the Vikings, who then would sell the slaves onward to the southern Islamic world. Both the Volga Bulgars and the Khazars would act as these financial intermediaries. The Khazars had their capital, Atil, situated at the mouth of the Volga River on the Caspian Sea, making an ideal middle ground between the northern European Vikings and the Islamic world. The Volga Bulgars had their capital city, the Great Bulgar, situated in the middle of the Volga River, allowing the Volga Bulgars to extract huge amounts of tolls from the north to south slave trade. Famed cities such as Novgorod and Kiev had humble beginnings as collection points, trading posts, and service stations for this long-distance commerce. But it wasn't just slaves that were being bought and sold at these great markets on the Volga River. The Vikings brought other goods to sell, as one Arab author listed: fur of foxes, beavers, spotted hares, goats, birch barks, hazelnuts, falcons, prepared horse hides, honey, and maple wood, amongst others. The Viking Rus were not only paid in Islamic silver coins, but with other trade goods that the Islamic world exported or re-exported, such as silk. Over 100 silk fragments were recovered from a remarkable ship excavated in Osberg, Norway. Silk could also be found as a prestige burial object in Viking tombs. Trading through the Russian waterways proved financially beneficial for all parties, except of course for the slaves. The Vikings grew fabulously wealthy and would adorn their women with a necklace for every 10,000 Islamic coins or dirhams they've earned, and some women could be seen wearing many of these symbols of wealth. Islamic coins could be found traveling up north. Over 200,000 Islamic coins from this time period have been recovered in northern, central, and eastern Europe. About 45,000 of these Islamic coins were found in Scandinavia, 20,000 on the Pomeranian coast, and 60,000 in Gotland. 1 in 3 Islamic coins that passed through Russia made its way back to the Baltic region to the Viking strongholds. In the 9th and 10th century, Scandinavian countries did not have their own minted currency. Rather, they would simply use the Islamic coins, dirhams, as local currency to conduct everyday commercial transactions. The Scandinavians would also cut their dirhams into pieces to further facilitate commercial activities within their own local communities. As time went on, the north to south slave trade began to dwindle, as the Viking Rus saw it more profitable to extract protection money from the Eastern Slavic communities rather than to enslave and sell them. Originally, the Slavic communities of central and southern Russia were paying tribute to the Khazars, but by the end of the 9th century, the Viking Rus demanded that all tribute payments should go to them and forbade the Slavic communities from paying tribute to the Khazars. The Khazars were growing fabulously wealthy as the go-between for the northern Baltic region and the Islamic world, charging tolls on all shipments that passed through their territory. These lucrative tolls resulted in the Khazars becoming the target of raids by the Viking Rus, which spilled over to all-out war for the trading routes. Khazar Muslim communities were ransacked and pillaged with a ferocity the Vikings were infamous for. One contemporary writer wrote, "If a leaf were on a branch, one of the Rus would carry it off. Not a grape, not a raisin remains." In 965, the capital city of Khazars were completely destroyed, and the Khazars were effectively removed as the financial intermediaries between northern Europe and the Islamic world. However, by the 10th century, due to internal strife and harsh weather, the Islamic world became destabilized. The Caliphate in Baghdad collapsed, with Basra being sacked in 923 and Mecca being attacked 7 years later. A series of harsh winters from 920 to 960s devastated the region, leading to massive food shortages and crop failures. As one Armenian author put it, people were forced to pick the grains of barley from the dung of horses and asses and eat them. And after 7 successive years of crop failure in 950s, many went mad and attacked each other senselessly. In 969, a catastrophic failure of the annual Nile floods left many dead or starving, which resulted in revolution and uprising all over northern Africa. A new powerful leader rose to fill the power vacuum, the Fatimids. The destabilization of the Islamic world made for bad trading, and Viking traders shifted their gaze from the previously lucrative north to south by the Volga River Islamic trade routes to the legendary gilded city of Constantinople. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this short trip in economic history. Please consider liking and subscribing to the Strange World of Econ channel. It's a great free way to support the channel so I can bring you even more great content. Till next time.